There's a quiet misunderstanding that sits at the center of countless failed relationships, and it usually goes unnoticed because it feels logical, feels fair, feels earned. Before we go any further, if you're here to understand patterns instead of chasing reassurance, stay with the channel and make sure you're subscribed. Men often believe that effort creates attraction, that consistency builds desire, that showing up, providing, sacrificing, and investing will naturally be rewarded with love. And in many areas of life, that logic works. Work harder, get better results. Put in the hours, earn the outcome. But attraction doesn't operate on effort-based economics. It operates on perception. Women don't measure desire by how much energy a man expends. They measure it by how a man orients himself in the relationship. Those are very different signals. Effort is visible. Desire is felt. Effort is something you do. Desire is something you evoke. Men are taught early that value comes from contribution, from problem solving, from fixing, from giving. So when a relationship feels uncertain, the instinct is to give more. More attention, more reassurance, more availability, more explanation. And from the male perspective, this makes sense. If something matters, you invest in it. But the female nervous system doesn't interpret increased effort the way men expect it to. Effort doesn't automatically translate into attraction. Sometimes it translates into pressure. Sometimes into dependency. Sometimes into loss of polarity. Here's the first uncomfortable truth. Women don't confuse effort with desire because their nervous systems evolved to read direction, not labor. They pay attention to where energy flows, not how much of it is spent. A man who is constantly adjusting himself around her, reshaping his priorities, softening his boundaries, and over-explaining his intentions may be working very hard. But the signal she receives isn't commitment. It's instability, not emotional instability. Structural instability. The nervous system asks a simple question. Is this person anchored, or are they orbiting me? Orbiting doesn't feel like desire. It feels like dependence. Pause here for a moment. This isn't about effort being unattractive. It's about effort without center being confusing. Desire requires a sense of gravity. Gravity comes from having your own axis. When a man's emotional state, decisions, and self-worth begin to revolve around maintaining her interest, the dynamic subtly shifts. She becomes the reference point. He becomes reactive. And reactivity doesn't inspire desire. It dampens it. Women intuitively understand this distinction, even if they can't articulate it. That's why they don't equate effort with attraction. They've learned, often through experience, that someone can work very hard and still feel empty. Because effort can come from fear. Fear of loss. Fear of disapproval. Fear of being replaced. Effort driven by fear feels different from effort driven by choice. The body feels the difference immediately. Here's where men get stuck. They assume that if effort doesn't work, the answer is more effort. More texts. More emotional availability. More demonstrations of care. But attraction doesn't respond to escalation. It responds to alignment. Alignment means your effort is an expression of who you are, not a strategy to keep someone. There's a woman named Sophie. She meets a man who is attentive, generous, always available. He rearranges his schedule for her. He checks in constantly. He wants to make sure she feels secure. First, it feels flattering, comforting, safe. Then something shifts. She starts feeling watched instead of chosen, needed instead of desired. His effort doesn't feel like a gift anymore. Feels like a request. Not spoken. Felt. She pulls back slightly. He notices and increases his effort. More reassurance. More communication. More presence. The gap widens. From his perspective, he's fighting for the relationship. From hers, he's dissolving into it. Another pause. This isn't cruelty. It's nervous system logic. Desire needs space to move. When effort fills every gap, desire has nowhere to go. Women understand this intuitively because their attraction mechanisms are more sensitive to polarity. Polarity requires difference. It requires two distinct centers interacting, not one center collapsing into the other. Effort that erases distinction erodes attraction. Men often hear this and assume the solution is to care less. That's not it. Caring less is just another reaction. The real shift is caring without chasing outcome. Women don't confuse effort with desire because desire shows up before effort. Desire is directional. It moves toward something independently. Effort that follows desire feels natural. Effort that tries to create desire feels heavy. Here's the contradiction most people avoid. Effort can increase attachment while decreasing attraction. Attachment feels safe. Attraction feels alive. They're not enemies, but they're not interchangeable. Men are often praised for being dependable, reliable, consistent, and those traits matter. But they don't automatically generate desire. They stabilize relationships after desire exists. Trying to use stability to create desire reverses the sequence. Women don't make that mistake as often because their attraction tends to be state-dependent. It responds to how someone shows up, not how much they give. A man who is grounded, purposeful, and emotionally self-regulated can offer less overt effort and still feel more attractive. Not because he's withholding, but because his presence has weight. Weight comes from self-possession. Another reflection. Effort that is not chosen freely becomes negotiation. And negotiation kills desire. When effort feels like, look what I'm doing for you, it creates obligation, not attraction. Obligation creates guilt. Guilt suffocates desire. This is why women often say they feel pressured even when a man is being kind. The kindness carries an unspoken expectation. Expectation is heavy. Women sense expectation quickly. They don't need it stated. This is also why men feel confused when their effort is met with distance. They believe they're moving closer. She feels the relationship becoming tighter, not deeper. Tightness restricts movement. Depth invites it. Another pause here. Think about moments when you felt most attracted to someone. It wasn't because they were trying harder. It was because they were being themselves without needing anything from you. Desire responds to autonomy. Women don't confuse effort with desire because desire doesn't require convincing. It's immediate. Effort is slow. It accumulates. Desire sparks. When effort replaces spark, the relationship becomes functional but uncharged. Functional relationships can last a long time, but they don't inspire longing. Men often confuse longevity with attraction. They think staying equals desire, but staying can be habit, comfort, fear of change. Women are more likely to leave relationships where effort is high but desire is low because effort doesn't feed their nervous system the way alignment does. That doesn't make them shallow. It makes them honest with their internal signals. Another uncomfortable truth. Men often perform effort to secure certainty. Women experience desire in uncertainty, not chaos. Uncertainty. Uncertainty leaves room for imagination, for projection, for curiosity. Effort that removes uncertainty too quickly collapses curiosity. This is why overcommunication can backfire. Why constant reassurance dulls attraction. Why explaining everything drains mystery. Mystery isn't about secrecy. It's about not being fully predictable emotionally. Predictability feels safe. Safety doesn't automatically feel attractive. This doesn't mean women want instability. It means attraction needs contrast. Men who confuse effort with desire often exhaust themselves trying to earn something that cannot be earned. Desire is invited by presence, not purchased by performance. Here's the final realization. Women don't confuse effort with desire because their nervous systems aren't tracking output. They're tracking orientation. Is he moving from his center or toward me? Is his effort an expression or a request? Once you understand that, your behavior changes naturally. You stop overgiving. You stop performing. You stop trying to manage outcomes. Not because you care less, but because you're no longer confusing effort with attraction. And when effort becomes a choice instead of a strategy, desire has space to breathe again. See the pattern. Protect your energy. This is depth realm.